Oh, Kevin, thank you so much for your presentation. It's too big for me, but I really appreciate it. And also thank you, Elizabeth and Juan, because of this invitation, not only to do this lecture here in the school, but also to be part of the staff during one semester and to share with you the experience of teaching and working with your students. I apologize, I will read because my English is not as strong to improvise, and I will try to be dynamic so you will not sleep during the presentation. Well, look at this illustration. Le Corbusier made it during the conference in October 1929 at the Center of Fine of Art in Buenos Aires. As he did it, he always drew when he talked, when he was given the lecture. He said, "Let's take a section through America. The Pacific Ocean is here. Then are the Andes. Argentina begins to spin its plateau and prairies. In this drawing, Chile doesn't exist. It is just the meeting point between the Pacific Ocean and the Andes Mountains. This invisibility, or rather blurry and tacit existence, led us out of the focus of the discussion, and for a long time we were like those thick images which are perceived by the corner of the eyes, just a texture that moves on the edge of the image, which, if you do not pay attention, simply does not exist, not because it is not there, but because it becomes almost invisible. And what interests me in that position is that the detail and the sharpness have not space, or rather, they are unimportant. My work takes place there, in Chile, and for reasons beyond my control, it is usually located outside of the city and far from urban complexity and regulations. This often isolated condition, as well as the scale of the proposal that we have had to develop, have given me space to introduce in our practice some thematics, or rather have given me room to a couple of recurrent obsessions, as you will see next. During the Venice Biennale on 2012, curated by David Chipperfield, Valerio Giatti was invited to present an installation called Pictographs, a statement of contemporary architects. His proposal was to explore the ambiguous and complex relationship that occur in that strange zone in architecture where both inspiration and imagination cohabit. With this in mind, he selected and invited 41 architects from around the world, whose work he deemed significant, to build a small and personal imaginary museum, City Malone. By having each one selected up to 10 images that would form part of the installation. The images could be broad spectrum, ranging from total reality to absolute abstraction. They could be images that we simply liked or that were significant for a specific point of view in our work. They could not be photographs of any personal work. The idea of building this visual memory of contemporary architecture through 323 reference images from these 41 architects literally placed the importance and significance of the image on the table, the image being that entity located halfway between the things and the representation, according to Philippe Ursprung quoting the French philosopher Henri Bergson, that form of non-verbal knowledge which is central in contemporary architectural production. The visual experience of knowledge, say Ursprung, cannot be fully explained by textuality. The invitation seemed me very exciting. On the one hand, I stood beside architects whose work I really admire, and on the other hand, it emphasized with a very empathized, with a very personal way to peek into the architectural project. An operation of private and confidential character that through the use of images somehow reconciles professional obligation with biographical indulgences. The architect and human being are schizophrenic beings, capable of living and acting in several layers of reality. Women, apparently, are even so more. We are eminently historical beings endowed with memory. The fragmentation of the images allow us to construct an abstract and labyrinthic aesthetic, as said by Didier Huberman, where each fragment operates independently from the other, but in turn is chained to the temporal continuum as a single narrative moment. So, as the Aleph of Borges, we can hold the whole world in an instant, in an image where history is amalgamated. For me, it is in this nomadic and deterritorialized knowledge where the architectural project decants and where it begins to outline its physical and material condition. The fundamental impurity of images, its vocation for displacement, its intrinsic nature for assembly, allows us to put together specific aspects that belong to architecture, which interact in a way that is more transversal and dialogic than linear and programmatic. In this way, possibilities can multiply and can exist the opportunity for new configuration. Among all of these images, the Atlas invests interstitial exploration areas, heuristic intervals, and specifically ignore the final axiom, because it responds to a theory of knowledge exposed to the danger and of the sensitive and to an aesthetic exposed to the danger of disparity. The images are explanations, metaphor, foundation, memories, and intentions. They are poetic and philosophical avowals. They reveal a personal perspective on thought. They show the roots of architecture and expectation concerning project. Conscious or unconscious, said Onjati in the book The Images of Architects, which later was bringing together the 42 collection by the invited architect. The pieces in this collection, which I set up while I speak to you, are not passive entities. They are active agents of a permanently ongoing process. This atlas is a collection of objets trouvés or objects found randomly and collected over the years. So, what is the order in this chaos? I believe it's the project. Try to keep these images in your head. In them, you have seen, among many other things, a strong material condition, its primordial state, the bone structure, the skeleton that support each one of the meanings of the architecture, the chromatic and textural continuity, and a certain atmosphere of neglect. Keep them as an halo, slightly out of focus. They maybe will explain the project I am going to show you much better and deeper than the story that accompanied them. I am going to show you a set of projects organized in terms of some obsessions that, to give them some sort of name, I have for today called the weight of things, sims, and bolts. Let's start with the weight of things. We will start with Bremen, and Rodrigo Pérez de Arce say in his book Domicilio Urbano that the urban villa typology recognizes a positive ambivalence between communal building and large houses, not so big as to generate alienation or so small as to generate urban atomization. Readily assimilated into the fabric of the city, versatile when offering in a compact matrix to the distinctive option of the first floor, intermediary body and crown. In this instance, the distinctive options are accepted without opposition, remaining barely emphasized by a continued external surface or of regular holes that serve in a filter for both the interior and exterior space. The project situated on Plaza Pedro Montt stems from three basic decisions. The volume, which is set by local regulation, it is devoted in the resulting horizontal areas on the south face of the building for the exterior circulation on the ground and third floor, and incorporating an interior circulation on the wider first and second floor. The circulation on the ground floor connects the space of the plaza with the building's area of communal use, eliminating all intermediation between the two, while that of the third floor could be considered as a large landscaped roof that combined areas of circulation and of terraces, both areas connected with a lift and a staircase. And the second important point for this project was the use of reinforced concrete structure of interior cross wall running into north-south direction and ribbed slab. This means that the facade are not load-bearing and permit the distribution of the program and of the ground floor to a much more flexibility. To position, that's the final point for setting the project, was to set a longitudinal conduit through which all the networks, discharges and extraction runs along which the dam stones are located. This enables the ends of the volume to be freed up to the living areas, dining rooms and bedrooms, and to make the apartment sizing and interior distribution more flexible. In the same group, the weight of things, I will show you two houses. The first one is the Marbella house, the Untitled project. This house formed part of a real estate venture that combined architecture, landscape, design and furniture. In designing this small group of houses, a limited number of constraints were agreed upon the participants, on which were 9 architects, including the landscape designer, in an attempt to protect the quality of the private and communal spaces. With no defined user and with a generic profile that was intuited rather than explicitly described, the type and quantity of enclosed space are those of a standard secondary residence for the upper middle class located in the head resort of the central coast of Chile. 3 bedroom, 3 bathroom, lounge, dining room and kitchen. In this house, the program has been divided in order to provide an autonomous unit, a single delimited space where all the public areas, interior and exterior, are situated, set out on a continuous flooring of stone slab, and a bedroom which is terrace, contained in the suspended volume of bare reinforced concrete. By means of the vertical compression or expansion of the space, this last volume defines the program layout on the upper floor, of the lower floor. A stone wall that winds obliquely across the terrain forms the boundary of the central space of the house, divesting the first level of the living unit of opaque elements so as to obtain the greatest possible sense of space and connectivity between the indoor and outdoor areas. The ancillary programs vanish behind this wall, permitting the east-west area of transition of the garden and the view of the surrounding. The final project is the house I present in the Latitude program in 2009, and there is a very good publication. I have to say it's the best publication about this house. It's the most complete amount of information about it. So if you are interested of having more about it, you can look at the name is, I think it's the Latitude book, the first one, no? So, as most of you already know this house, I want to spend a lot of time describing it here. I will just talk about some of the themes that surround it. The first one is in reference to the design plan and the degrees of precision that the structure it contains assumes. The proposal for the house in Bahía Azul sought to be sufficiently generic in order to transcend a specific cultural, temporal, and geographical demand. In this context, the objective was to overcome the ergonomic condition of the Commission and ensure it be situated outside the actual Commission, in a way that was more architectural ambiguous in its design plan, but without being anonymously hygienic. In this way, the possibility of a determined architectural structure that would allow and encourage future development while ensuring flexibility seemed to me to be essential, both from the point of view of the optimization of the resources invested and from the point of view of the dialogue between the user and this infrastructure which necessarily manifests itself over the time. This is why the proposal tries not to constitute itself as a metaphor of a specific life. It aims to be less narrative and more constructive. The second theme refers to how the concept for the structure, as well as organizing the space and the materials, will be what constitute the final image of the project. A minimum articulation, the monolithic construction, the basic shape, and a dialogue between stability and mass in suspension will not allow only be the key to understanding the way in which the structural efforts of the house are transmitted, but also constitute the focus of the aesthetical proposal of the project. Finally, related to the previous issues, is my interest in the shell as an aspect of the project, as an issue of architecture, not only engineering, as what gives meaning and a place for the environment and atmospheric experience of the project to exist or be deposited. I will start with the second group of projects, which are just two of them. Kevin have mentioned them, so I call them themes. The first of them, it's the Sergio Larraín García Moreno Document Center in the campus Comendador of the School of Architecture in the Catholic University in Santiago. In 1994, the Art and Architecture faculty of the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile held a competition of preliminary design for the Sergio Larraín García Moreno Document Center. The building meant to accommodate a library, an auditorium, computer laboratory, a canteen, a bookshop, toilet, and will be constructed in an open area of the Contador campus between an old house declared a national monument and the existing building on the north side of the plot. The competition was won by the team led by Teodoro Fernandez, and where Smiljan Radic and me were part of it. In general terms, the project proposed a generous and unobstructed space by constructing an open esplanade and a roof that flowed between the Contador house and the remaining building, all of which will be united by the interior garden of the block. Linked to this, it was also proposed to create a secondary main floor, open and fluid, that will do duty as a second foundation of the campus on the subterranean level, where the main hall of the library was located. A year after the construction began, the work was interrupted due to the fact that the cost was exceeding the fund assigned to the project, which is something that happens in Chile, leaving half of the program originally requested and planned for. As a testimony of the wish of the faculty to conclude the work, an open space was left on the interior of the campus for more than 10 years. Later, another project was commissioned that will firstly complete the work and secondly resolve the needs for a campus that had changed a great deal. The library had reduced its storage needs and the canteen had already been built, and the budget, of course, had been cut. The original project from 10 years before will have to be adjusted to suit the new situation. Parallel to this architectural ensemble, which since the 18th century has undergone as a constant process of transformation, in this second phase, the project underwent a process of adaptation within the original matrix of the competition project from 1994. The second phase of the intervention is characterized by maintaining and defending the consistency of the original intervention, recognizing the non-negotiable features of the first proposal. On the one hand, a spatial structure that facilitates a process of growth and occupation for the campus, and on the other, the construction of spaces and scales that assume maximum flexibility of use by assuming that the current requirement will change. In this phase, we consolidate a system of floor slab that articulate the subterranean level proposed in the 1994 project with the natural level of the terrain to the east, an area that had formed part of the campus since 2000. In a silent, low-key manner, the building has managed to articulate and organize different temporalities, construction, functions, and levels, and has generated an open and multiplying platform for future development. The second project in this group is the Palacio Pereira project, which was a competition. I participated in that project with Paula Velasco and Alberto Moleto. They were my partners on that. And of course, we have a big team of consultants, both in engineering term and in restoration specialty. We work on that with Fernando Pérez Oyarzún from the Catholic University, with Alan Chandler, from the river. It's a restore architect from the river, and also Luis Cercos, a Spanish architect who was part of the big group of Spanish people who arrived with a strong and knowledge in technology to Chile. The condition of the palace is unique in Santiago. The presence of the decayed palace is a mirror to the modern city. Its aesthetic quality a measure of social and cultural progress. What began as unauthentic expression, stucco masonry, of the culture of a European copying Europe elite, with time and following its abandonment, has acquired the patina of truth, and this material decadence has given the construction its greatest achievement. Its palace is a genuine local, the palace in its genuine local context. The question of how to address the materiality of the building as it stands is the key of the project. This is a quotation of William Morris. A church on the 11th century may be added to or altered in the 12th century, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, or even in the 17th or 18th century. But every change, whatever history is destroyed, left history in the gap, and was alive with the spirit of the deeds done meets on the fashion. The result of all this was often a building in which the many changes, through harsh and visible enough, were by their very contrast interesting and instructive, and could by not possibly mislead. The negotiation between preservation, the building as an historical artifact, and enabling the constant adjustment between place and human needs is perfectly identified by Morris at the start of the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings Manifesto in 1877. Morris celebrated overlapping social need, but this view was qualified by the way it was executed, the skill with which the settings were introduced are testament to the artistic ability of man. What was made intrinsically included the how, and it was made. Recovery of the Pereira Palace provided a starting point from which to attempt a reconciliation between two potentially antagonist positions, conservation and renewal. If today the palace is a setting for culture, commissioning, refurbishment, how can we now take control of its dilapidated condition and simultaneously handle the concept of truth and history? When we selected the strategy for the use of material, the project aimed to draw attention to the complexity of enabling a ruin, without prioritizing the new intervention nor the elegant and decadent character of the palace. The passage of time has given the building that Romanticism called sublime, where the material effect offered the viewer a direct understanding of time, inspiring respect and veneration, which may be associated in the 18th century with the aesthetic of enlightenment joined to the natural process and human capacity for amazement. The empty space inside the site offered the possibility of reconstructing the typology of the original block and respond to the symmetry of Beaux-Arts in order to create a new whole. The main structure of the new building is of its time, and it is clearly inserted to permit its use without disturbing the seal of the old palace, pushing the new structure and foundation away from the fragile brick wall. The use of the corridor with a cross layout is replicated in the new courtyard, reinterpreting the access area to the palace as a winter garden that connects the earth of the old building with that of the new one as a social and environmental space of rest. Modernity is characterized by standardization of assembly and tactics for using the component, a delicate intangible aesthetic in contrast to the traditional construction based on intervention that operate through the fit interconnection and accumulation of operation aimed at protecting soft material through the use of other that are increasingly hard. The merge of both material quality through the taking attention to detail was required at the palace, questioning the polarization of the historic and the modern. Let me show you a very quick research we did in the palace because we wanted to check if the process and the methodology and even the material we were proposing for the restoration will work well on the fabric period. This is not a restoration process, it's just a research process. So the final issue is not the final result of the work which will be done, I hope, next year. We choose a single part of the internal gallery, and we choose that one because it was the most damaged visually. So we assume that most of the problem we will have to face on the works will be inside this area. So we start with cleaning, and once we clean, we left just this. We lost everything because the damage was much deeper than that was visible, and that was the first important thing to consider for the project. So we start working with a specialist in Greek fabric from the 19th century, and with cal, I don't know the name in English, lime and other process which not incorporate putzolanicos and neither concrete on their fabric. So we start working by layers, different layers. All the thickness of the surface is done in 4 or 5 parts, and this is part of the process. And also in the facade we did the same, and we had a very strong surprise because the facade, which everybody assumed it as a monochrome surface, was actually had a very strong pattern of different color, different kind of white, light blue, ochre. And so we cleaned one module of the facade, and we realized that there was in the facade a very strong chromatic strategy which will be recovered because it's not painting, it's the lime with the color incorporated in the thickness. So the way, the color and the characteristic, the texture of this surface is absolutely different. It's deeper than a simple painting result. And let's go to the final group of projects. I will show you three different projects. I have called them Vault because I didn't find a better name for this. And the first project is a very small one, but I like it very much. It's small mansard in the top of a house from the 50s, a house which was designed in a French style. The Solinger system, or lamella roof construction, was originally a low-budget response for industrialized and serial solution that aimed to rectify the deficit in housing in Germany after the First World War. The possibilities provided by this system of building arched roof for larger span using minimal or serial elements such as sawn wood, was quickly adopted for uses in the construction of schools, warehouses, churches, among others. Its construction uses between 50% and 40% less wood than a conventional roof made of wooden arches. It can be built in 40% of the time by just few workers. It is dismountable, easy to transport, and as well as the low cost, its components are easy to replace. In Chile, this system was introduced in the mid-20th century and is associated with agriculture and the country industrialization process. The dimensions of this structure are varied, reaching span up to 30 meters, and just as happened in Europe, their use ended in the 60s, and all the information on their design and system of calculation was subsequently lost. In collaboration with Smiljan Radic in 2008, we create a proposal for Miele, Chile, which basically consisted of a dome piece of 25 and 12 meter width, which recaptured this technology. This noble floor was set upon a central structure of reinforced concrete. In comparison with the reference structure, the proposal eliminated the central key to the system and aimed at construction a continuous dome. The project presented here, developed in collaboration with Nicolas Norero, again insists upon this system, through now in a domestic setting, as a solution of the construction of a single interior-exterior space on an existing one-story French-style house built in Santiago in 1952. This is the second project. It's a house. We have finished it at the end of the last year. From the back of the property, the house appears as a compact autonomous piece sitting on the site. It presents to the visitor as a continuous and massive entity on the coastal landscape. The opposite side faces the sea and what seemed monolithic now dissolved. The interior open to the sunlight and the views. Both sides are part of the diverse reality of this weekend house, allowing an intimate connection to the distant horizon and the rim of the sea, whereas retaining a protected realm devoted to family life. A significant feature of the design is the vaulted concrete roof membrane that covered the upper floor, hovering over the open plan where social activities take place. The vault is an element that has been present in the vernacular architecture since a long ago. 20th century architecture re-elaborated it during the 50s and 60s because of its constructive quality and efficiency. The project recovered the vaults as long folded concrete beams that create ample interior and large spans with minimum support. The reduction of the number of structural elements falling in the ground results in a flexible, continuous open plan capable to change and adapt to different demands through the days and the year. At the same time, the vaulted concave space provides a continuous but full of nuances interior space and a memorable experience. And the last project is the Indigo Hotel, a project that I really like. And unfortunately, I didn't win the competition, but the first prize was never built, never. So I am looking for a client who wants a project from a hotel, 5 rooms, and it's absolutely free, the architectural proposal. So if you know someone, please give him my email. Well, this project is the outcome of a restricted competition for the Hotel Indigo in Santiago. The program demanded 50 bedrooms, which accounted for 70% of the total surface area. And so it seemed interesting to concentrate our design energies into this point. As opposed to the usual typology of this kind of project, in which a grid organized the subdivision of a vertical system of floor, we wanted the bedroom unit to have a clear identity. We also wanted the building to be formally and structurally based on a stack of those three-dimensional units. To that end, we considered two kinds of vaulted components using the trolley prefabricated system. The biggest with a span of 5 meters for the public areas on the lower level and the top floor, and the small one on 3.75 meters for the bedroom, which occupies the intermediate body of the building. On the bedroom floor, we added some slender floor slab housed in the space in between the slab are all the sanitary, electrical, and climate control installation. This space also incorporates a system of natural air circulation that crosses the building in a transverse direction and whose function is to make the structure more energy efficient. In order to give the building a clear and prominent identity in its context, we decide to use a continuous, non-articulated shape that will be situated between the neighboring buildings in a neutral, silent way. The bordering concrete band face with white sugar-colored tiling and intersected by the vaulted unit resulted in the upper profile of the building and the system of perforation, where added some opaque panels whose function it was to control the degrees of privacy for the and insulation for the bedrooms. The volume became detached from the ground, generating an indoor public level that extended toward the garden, visually incorporating the hotel's external programs. Sited on the vaulted open floor on the top story was the spa area and gymnasium, and on the underground level a small convention center. And here I am showing you the strategy for constructing the vault in the upper level in the spa area. And it's a very simple operation. From a cylinder, you cut it in a diagonal and not parallel to the axis of the cylinder. So if you put one of the sides parallel to the floor, you will have the other side going up, and so allowing the light, the natural light, going into the plan. The advantage of this is that you can have a very large and profound plan without window, but with enough natural light for having light inside of it. And here we developed some prototype of bedrooms. And finally, this is the wood model we did for the competition. And that's it. Thank you very much.